So right now I'm going to welcome Randall, who's joined us quietly in the background.
Thank you.
And yeah, you're welcome, Sarah. And Randall is well known to the home educating community for trying to point out the warning signs and the red flags and, um, shouting a warning. And we just thank you, Randall, for all the work you and your wife, Mary, have done over the years. And what we're really wanting you to talk a bit about today is the the direction of travel. So this isn't something that just suddenly happened in the last year or so. This is something that's been going on for a long time. And I know you have all the records and you forget nothing and you keep records of everything. But we're very thankful for that. So yeah, so I'm going to hand over to you and we're, as I said to you, we can, we might want to ask some questions here and there, but I know you know your stuff. So yeah.
Thank you both for having me, and wonderful that I got straight in without any trouble, like some of your earlier guests. So
Yeah.
I'm pleased about that. Yes, you asked me to give you something of a background because I think we need to understand the background to what's happening in the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Act and many other pieces of legislation. We've just had the SEND review mentioned, and this is all part of a package, but I'm going to cover that a bit more. But it is important to do it so we know what actually we're fighting. And one of the things I want to say is I think it's been mentioned. I haven't been able to listen to everything so far, but um, I think Michael Charles mentioned that this is a human rights issue. And that's why we need to understand the roots of this, where it's come from, and the threat it poses. So in the time you've told me what my brief was, I've put together a few slides. I hope to talk to, let's be realistic, round about 15 minutes. And then if people want to put questions in as I'm going through, I'll take them at the end. And I'm sure between you two, if I don't provoke questions from everybody else, you'll come up with some. But let me share my screen and then we'll get talking. Hopefully this will work. Looks like it. Yeah.
Yeah, you're there.
Wonderful, wonderful. Right, now just let me get to the right place here. Okay, so what I want to do briefly is give us some background understanding to the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Act in its context, the context it's come in. And there you can see that's a screenshot of the Act on the Parliament's website, legislation. But I'm going to be right up to date. I want to quote our new, not yet Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, from his speech yesterday, which was televised. And the phrase that hit me was, "I am clear. Britain took a series of wrong turns in the 1980s. Well, I might say we began to take them before then, but he is right. Oh, he says slowly at times imperceptibly, over 4 decades, political and economic power draining their way out of our communities in every region and nation of the UK. I hope this isn't just rhetoric that he hopes people will like him, but I think he's very right there. There has been something happening for decades now, not just in this country, but in the West, where power has been taken away. I'll come back to what he didn't say in a minute. But what's those 4 decades? Very quickly, those are the prime ministers he's complaining about. I'm not surprised Thatcher's there, given that he's on the other side of the house. But please notice it includes Tony Blair's and Gordon Brown's time. So he's actually criticising some of Labour's icons from the past. The reason David Cameron's got orange dates next to him, by the way, if you don't remember, his was a coalition government with the Lib Dems. He's criticising them, and every Conservative and Prime Minister since. And even though he spoke warmly about Keir Starmer, he's included Keir Starmer 2 years in those decades. So what he didn't include in the long list of what's gone wrong, here are my 3 points. He didn't comment on the fact that state no longer trust parents nor the extended family to protect their children. Its alternative belief is that ultimately only it, the state, can properly provide for every child and protect them. I stuck the word provide in there because of the ridiculous thing about every child getting a free breakfast. You know, not every child needs the state to feed it a free breakfast, but it's what the state is thinking. And it's this doctrine which underlines much of the Children's Wellbeing in School Act, not just the children not in school registers. So, for example, and I will come back to one of them in a minute, other clauses, other sections 2, 3, and 4 all come under child protection and safeguarding. And all of those feed into this narrative that has impacted home education and the freedom to take children out of school when it doesn't suit them quite badly. And the one I will be mentioning is the information sharing approach. I haven't got time to go into consistent identifiers, but they all fit together. And added in lately, late in its journey through Parliament, the bill, we got the online safety, which is causing lots of rumours about, is it the state's duty to tell teenagers what they can and can't do, or is it the parents' responsibility? We're not going to discuss that one. But there's been other recent legislation that have all fed around this area. Online Safety Act, Data Use and Access Act, all about what people can and cannot see. And the one that really worries me is there's been a consultation on it already, is the Child Protection Authority for England. One reason it worries me is because there's a Child Protection Authority in the Republic of Ireland, and that's been causing a lot of trouble for home educated families. So there's plenty here that's all packed around it. So here's my illustration, thanks to a guy called AI, of what the mindset is in the state child protection industry. If a child is in our trolley, they are safe. If they're not in our trolley, like the home educated kids in the background, they're not safe. AI came up with a really good illustration that I think I know which ones look most happy. I didn't tell it to make the ones in the trolley miserable, but to me, that is the mentality we are fighting. So how did we get here? I'm going to take you on a very quick home education timeline. I'm going to miss out a lot of the chunks, but I've put them in here. So if you watch the video back, you can stop it and have a look at them. Or perhaps if I get permission to stick the video of this onto my website, I'll give you the PDF of the slides as well. We're no longer in the days of the home ed pioneers. I'll call that 50s to 60s. There's a lot of people, one of them, I'm sure you know about Joe Baker, but there were others who were real pioneers of the freedom to home educate. Those days are gone, and I fear too many home educators live back in the 50s to 70s. But as Burnham recognises, societal changes began in the 1980s at the very latest. And the first marker we need to be aware of is the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. The UK signed it in April 1990. That was in the last 12 months of Margaret Thatcher's premiership. It was ratified with reservations in December 1991, and by then John Major was the Prime Minister. However, it did not impact things very much as far as legislation was concerned until the Children's Act 2004, which was brought in by Blair's government. It was based on the 2003 Green Paper, Every Child Matters, and it implemented a lot of things that were required because we had ratified the UNCRC. Amongst these were the establishment of children's commissioners, the merging of education with children's social services, and it also set up the means for putting in place a thing that then was called Contact Point, which totally failed. And its Contact Point was really the forerunner of what we've now got as the unique identifier, boosted by AI, a number so that you don't get John Smith and Johnny Smith as two different children, and so on. It is all that agenda is still going forward. It's just been refreshed. Nothing was said really at that stage about home education. We had to wait until 2006, and I must admit I didn't find this till relatively recently. A gentleman called Ivert wrote a report which was published in August 2006. It was about the Gypsy, Roma and traveller communities and home education. But the report went further than just that community, and the key recommendation was a standardized national system of registration for all home educated children. That is the first mention I have found of that being put into practice. And as we know, they've struggled for long years to bring it in. A bit more key was written in two letters. There were different letters, one by the Education Minister, Alan Johnson, and one by the Schools Minister or somebody in the upper house, Lord Adonis. And they were answering different questions about home education, but they obviously had the same script writer. And the letters say the state does not currently prescribe what form of education parents should provide. Whilst all maintained and independent school provision is prescribed in legislation and subject to inspection, this anomaly is at odds with the Every Child Matter reforms supported by the Children Act 2004. So that is a very clear indication that what has been brought about in the Children Not in Schools registers in the CWS Act is designed to make the state be able to prescribe that what is taught and inspect how it's being taught, even in home education. It's as clear as anything, but it hasn't been engaged with, and we need to. And I don't know how the government has responded or how they will respond to this legal challenge, but I think they will come out and they will have to admit in the end they want every child's education to be prescribed and inspected by the state. Now, I'm not going to go through all these, but following that, the ball started rolling with what many of you will have heard of, the Badman Review, launched in January 2009. Ed Balls, who was the Education Minister, brought in the Children's Schools and Families Bill in 2009. That was the first piece of legislation to have registers in it. That clause was removed prior to the 2010 general elections. Then things went quiet, until we had conversations raised up by Michael Wilshaw of Ofsted in 2015 about illegal schools and the connection with home education. Lord Soley picked up, he was very much in favour of the children's schools and family bill provision. He picked up in June 2017 a private members bill, and his bill was never going to get through, but it got stirred up the muck. It got everybody's attention back on this question. And lots of things happened. I'm not going to read them all. There's just a whole lot of things there that happened over the next 2 or 3 years. And it went through, and even the Education Committee had an inquiry which riled a lot of people and brought some of us into contact with each other who hadn't known each other. That rumbled on till the schools bill in 2022. That was abandoned in the December, and you will remember there was a whole host of things happening there. So that's it. That all went before the Children's Wellbeing in Schools bill. That screenshot is from December. It's a different colour now if you go onto the page. But that is all that led up to the bill. Now, what's happening as a result of it? We know what's happening in the register side, but this is something that landed on my desk. Somebody amongst the home educating communities went to this seminar run by the DFE on the information sharing duty, and got a copy of the slides as a PDF and circulated it to me and to lots of other people. And they know who they are. And I want to say thank you very much. It was really helpful. Okay. That was the first page. This is the second page. There's too much there for me to go through. But when I saw that page, it really gave me one strong impression. Just let me take what is at the top and blow it up so you might be able to read it unless you're on a phone. Under the information sharing duty, what are we trying to address? Children and families will interact with a range of services at one time, and each organisation may have a unique insight into their lives. Effective information sharing is essential to build a fuller understanding of a child's life, to early identify need or concerns before escalation, and provide timely support. If you read that slow enough, and I hope I did, that tells you they want to know everything about every child. They want it all coordinated to stop any problems arising. Now, when you think that might be a good aim, you have another question. What damage is it going to do into prying into every child's life? This is a real question we need to be asking. And what do I mean? You remember that big target thing? There you are, you've got the diagram. I've taken the middle because it's so small, even in the original, it's hard and it's very blurry there. But right in the middle is the child surrounded by their multi-ethnic family. We're not going to go into it in details, but right at the middle of this. And so this gives me the impression of an arena with all these different agencies and people in those agencies peering in to the family to protect, inverted commas, the child. We've heard earlier this afternoon about how some of these people don't understand the child and the damage they do by not wanting the child to do what's best for them. Saying, oh, it's not in their best interest. But this is that you are putting every child in the middle of an arena, and all this is focused on the child. If you want to know what the layers are, I've blown up the key. Starting at the bottom, the outer ring is national government departments. Then you've got national arm's length bodies like the Children's Commissioner and national charities. They're involved in this. You've got the statutory safeguarding partners. You've got the multi-agency safeguarding hub, MASH membership. And then you've got local services, frontline interaction with the family. All these different layers are not trusting the family to keep the child safe. All these are set up to protect the child because the state does not trust the family, the nuclear family, nor the extended family. There is one area here that isn't quite government. You'll see in the bottom left-hand corner, there's a red ellipse, and I've highlighted the word third sector. The two square boxes are national charities. The one they list are NSPCC, Children's Society, and Barnardo's. And then in the middle, you've got community and voluntary organisations. All the rest of that diagram is about state partners, state stakeholders in your children. But I didn't quite know what MCHLG meant. So I looked it up, and it's the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Governments, which therefore oversees even the charities and the third sector organisations. So there's that diagram, going back to it. What does this diagram suggest? Well, to me, I've already mentioned what I suggest, but I'll put it this way. That we live at a time when many people believe it takes the state to raise every child. Parents, the extended family, the village just can't do it. This is the setting of the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill. They talk about our children, not your children, not my children, but our collective children. The state assumes that every state player is a stakeholder in your child's life. And that is an economic mindset to them because they are investing money in your children and they don't want your children to be a burden on the state going forward. That works out in lots of ways. But this is mindset perfectly illustrated for me by this diagram. I'm coming to a close and I want to go back to kind of where I started, because I started with the UNCRC, and UNESCO is the body that is meant to implement the UNCRC worldwide, oversee its implementation. And in September last year, it published its homeschooling through a human rights lens. There is other things available about it, but I just want to highlight this. They also published a press release on the same day, and the final section asks the question, what are some key considerations around homeschooling? And this is what they're recommending to governments worldwide. Key considerations include ensuring that homeschooling fosters child well-being, acknowledges the diversity of homeschooled learners, and encourages exposure to cultural diversity. I could talk about that for a while. I'm not going to. It's the red underlined bit I want to emphasize. Governments must. Notice the word there. It is governments must. Not should, not could, not may. It is must. UNESCO is telling every government in the world that it must implement oversight mechanisms such as registration and evaluations, while ensuring regulatory capacity and providing parental support. We'll come on to parental support another day. That's a Weasley word. But notice registration and evaluations. That is what Alan Johnson and Lord Adonis said in their letters was the missing anomaly about home education, pointing back to the Children's Act 2004 and the Getting It Right for Every Child, both of which come out of joining the UNCRC. So the driver for what we're seeing is not silly politicians. The driver is very much this international agenda that is being marketed through human rights. If you want the evidence, recent stories from Finland, from Brazil, from Holland, where the headline is really the government in The Hague tells homeschooling parents to send their children to school. Blanket thing. The last one is from New Zealand. They got the government to back down there recently, but if you read the report carefully, it's being paused so that the government can think about it, and obviously they'll try and do it. So one last slide. I want to highlight what I believe is the difference between how the human rights culture, the international law culture was introduced after 2 world wars and how it's been operated today. On the left, you have a family in the 1950s who remember very well that in the world wars, you had authoritarian states dominating citizens. Hitler is famous because his regime was really totalitarian, authoritarian, but there was others. There was Hitler, there was Russia, there were others. There was communists and they were right wing. And totalitarianism can belong to any side of politics. But people in the end of the 1940s and 1950s wanted protecting from totalitarian states, and human rights were sold to them on that basis. And the child on the left-hand side is holding up a shield faced by an aggressive looking state and saying, I have got human rights to protect me. By today, those human rights have been shaped into something else. They're a sword to divide children from their parents, to let the state into the home. And if you remember, if you've seen it, if not, please find it and read it. Last year, the Christian Institute published a legal opinion from Aidan O'Neill, QC, and he kept talking about a post Nuremberg society. Britain is a post Nuremberg society. He was reminding people that human rights were created with the vision of the 1950s, and now they're being used as a weapon against citizens in the 1920s. Oh, sorry, in the 2020s. So that is the context. And that is why I am pleased to see this legal action we're talking about has got this human rights component in it. It is vital. It has to be pressed that human rights are being abused. I'm going to stop there, and I hope you got lots of questions and things.
Well, I think, Randall, it's actually quite shocking to see how far this has come, And we've got Michael Charles joining us. He might not be on camera, but he is joining us quickly. So, and he is out at the moment. And I just wanted to say, Randall, the one thing that when you were sharing about the information sharing aspect, the kind of thing, a picture I had in my mind is this kind of peekaboo, I know everything about you kind of mentality, like there's no sort of privacy left. So yeah, so Mike, welcome. Thank you for joining us. I know you are very busy and we're not going to necessarily get you on camera. So we have been talking today about the legal challenge. We have had some donations in, not as many as I'd like. It hasn't shifted in the last while. So I would like to see the more donations come in. But and Randall has just been talking about the human rights aspects of where things are heading, and that this legal challenge needs to challenge on the basis of human rights.